The future of supply chain visibility. Joining us to speak about that today, Krenar Komoni, CEO and founder of Tive. Krenar, welcome.
Welcome, Russ. Thanks.
Krenar, let's talk about some of the major shifts that you see taking place, changes that you have seen taking place in visibility. Walk us through those. What would you say is going on?
I think one exciting thing that's really happening is, from what I've seen in the last couple of years, is just visibility is finally real. It's finally something that customers are seeing that it's possible. They can see that end-to-end visibility is happening. And if you look at last week, I was at Gartner at supply chain event there, and they give a big talk. And if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, and when you look like peak of inflation and trough of delusion, and then finally the kind of slope enlightenment, visibility is really in that place of slope of enlightenment where we are actually seeing major adoption with customers and visibility is happening. And one thing that's changing is we see that data is becoming finally available, especially when it comes to trucks and telematics, is customers are telling the carriers, we need to know where these trucks are, we need to know where these vessels are, we need to know where our containers are, we need to know what flights we're taking. And the data is available through new technologies, through APIs. And being able to pull that data now for various companies that are starting out there to provide visibility, it's been really good.
Well, Krenar, let's follow up on what you just mentioned about data. How are these changes, as far as you can see, going to change, through the use of big data, of course, going to change the industry? And then what about open data? What do you see the role of that being? What do you say?
Very good question. I think there's one shift that's really happening. There's other companies now that are starting actually just aggregating data from these carriers and actually making a single source where you can go in as a platform provider, as a company that builds software, as a company that's trying to build visibility, and go and ask these companies, I need data from this carrier, that carrier, I need data for this vessel. And that aggregation has helped a lot in the industry, and that's what's happening. And what used to be that carriers used to be closed and they own their data and they were not being open about it, and that openness is really helping the industry. And that is just created more innovation within the space, and finally is enabling that end-to-end visibility for customers, which is really exciting.
Turn to this. What, in your estimation, comes with and after visibility? How would you characterize that?
Well, I would say let's imagine a world where visibility is all complete. We have full visibility. We know location of everything. Every single truck, every single shipment, every single vessel, every single flight. That's amazing, right? That's a beautiful world.
What a wonderful world it would be, yeah.
But what happens next? I think the one thing that's happening already today is predictions. Now we can finally predict when a particular truck is going to arrive at a destination. So we can predict for arrival, we can predict for pickups, we can predict estimated time of arrivals, and that just helps with customer satisfaction, number one. It also helps make supply chain a little bit more efficient than it is today. But let's say we predict everything, and now we know everything is going. What's the next thing? I believe that the next thing is really more on the prescriptive side. So before you even start a shipment, before you even get that product from your supplier on that load on the shipment, being able to know when it's actually going to arrive, let's say with 95% accuracy. You can look at weather, you can look at other patterns, you can look at what carrier you're using, you look at all the data that you've gathered for particular routes that have been taken, you can look at what's the events that are happening in the globe and say, well, with 95% accuracy, we predict that it's going to be at that location at this time, but we could prescribe you something better. If you want something 7 days earlier, why don't you change the carrier? Why don't you change the route? Because there are some shifts that are happening at these ports. There are some shifts that are happening. I think that's kind of the next thing on the... But after that, where is the future? Let's say we now can prescribe, we can get really accurate ETAs and arrivals. We have predictions. I think the next thing is really automation.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if the next thing is automation, I then wanted to follow up and say, well, let's talk about the continuing evolution. Where do you see all this going?
I think so. Automation is one where we have automated trucks, automated vessels. I think that's gonna make supply chains with less paperwork, less people involved. It'll just and the data there is really important in order to make that happen. And where do I see it going? I think there's some exciting things happening on the sensor space, where yes, now we can tell where a particular truck is. So GPS has become almost a commodity as far as telematics and as far as location of goods go. But what is happening actually? What's happening with the goods? What's happening with those chemicals? What's happening with those active ingredients that are being shipped for a particular pharma company, or electronics for a company that ships, let's say, base stations across the world, or a company that's shipping meat or coffee? I think the sensors are becoming more and more cost effective, and they'll be able to communicate straight to the cloud, and they're becoming in a way that they can go into almost every single shipment. And the next thing after that is also, I think blockchain is going to play a big effect with companies like TradeLens and others coming into play. There's a big chance with smart contracts, suddenly where you have automation and have this data, to be able to execute contracts automatically and have less paperwork. I think that's the next thing that's coming too. But we're really excited about the sensing space too, and I think the future is really bright.
It's an exciting new world that we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
I know you're busy here at the conference, but you found time to speak with us about this. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Russell.
That's Krenar Komoni, Tive, and speaking with us today about some exciting, very exciting technologies out there in the supply chain space. Thank you for watching.